All right, welcome everybody. We have sort of something special going on the stream today. Not playing a game, but gonna have spewing some hot takes, some hot discussion about the Summoner Wars Master Set. And I have here with me, if you want to introduce yourself, Cell from the Discord.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on. This is my second time on the stream. Some of you may remember me from, I guess it was quite a few months ago now. It was later on last year. Um, I was really thankful to be on. We watched a game, Ben and I watched a game together and did some commentary on the game. It was a lot of fun. And he and I have talked since then about doing this stream. It's been quite a while in the making, getting our schedules to line up. But talking about the master set, going card by card, and our thoughts and things that we would change. So I've been looking forward to this. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so this was your idea for this format, like, and walk me through, yeah, exactly how you want this discussion to go. So we're talking about all the cards in the master set and just our personal opinion, our hot takes of what we would do differently. How do you want to run it?
Yeah, you pretty much said it. We'll just stick to those six factions. Wave one, for all the fans of the game, you've probably noticed now that each wave is six factions. And so the first wave was the master set. Um, the second wave started with the starter set of Tundra Orcs versus Phoenix Elves, and then moved into the format that has now been carried forward ever since, which is then just two factions at a time in individual packs. So wave one, that was the master set box, and Plaid Hat has grown tremendously. The playtesting team has grown tremendously in experience from that starting point. Things have really tightened up. The testing has gotten a lot crisper. Most of the fans agree that if there are some cards that might need some adjustment, it's probably cards from that first wave. Maybe a handful, from a later wave, but it's mostly that first wave. And so I was thinking, what a great opportunity here to have a conversation, go card by card with the factions. Some will go obviously quicker than others, but and to talk about balance, which is something that it has always fascinated me. I love conversations about hard balance because there's the cold, hard reality of balance, which is just simply looking at the numbers and comparing it to your baseline, comparing it to what's already been established in the game. But then there are the more abstract aspects of balance, which are impactful and which do have to be considered, and they're so much harder to consider. And that becomes things like fun factor. A card can be super
Mm-hmm.
well balanced, but if it really creates a negative play experience, that needs to be mitigated. And yet, then when you mitigate that, are you actually pushing that card out of balance, either too weak or too strong? So these types of conversations really fascinate me because I'm always intrigued by how saving a little bit off of one aspect of a card then creates a possible issue somewhere else with that card in the game. Um, yeah, and it can make some real brain burn, but that kind of brain burn is a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And balancing is hard. And I feel like if there's one thing I've learned just by like talking so much in the Discord is that like you really just need playtesting data. Like this game just lives and dies by the playtester. So of course, so everything we're saying
100%.
right now is speculative, and we've given more or less thought to various things. There's a ton of champions that I'll be like, yeah, I want to buff it, but I haven't really thought about how. So, like more or less thought, but also like even like the best idea you might just find in playtesting, like, oh, it just has this problem, or it's just this strong. Like you just can't like all every any sort of idea would need to be play tested. And of course the other disclaimer is this is just entirely us just like imagining the perfect world where everything could be perfect balance. And Plaid Hat has released some errata, but they're doing it very minimally, like sort of understandably so, because it's a print game and it's expensive to like reprint a bunch of cards. One idea I had, well, and so what we've had so far is four errata. Three of them are summoners, and one of them is an epic event. Like, what one idea I've had is like something like, I don't know, like maybe I'd like pitch to Plaid Hat like a few years down the line is like there could maybe one day be an errata pack. Like the way that we've released errata so far is like if you want the Vanguard Sarah errata and the Ice Ram errata, you got to buy High Elves. It'll just those cards will come with it. Or if you just buy any newly printed copy of the Master Set, it will also be in there. But there's a lot of old printed copies still on the shelves, surely. And the same thing with Koldak Maldaria, that's in Grox. But so we've just like slipped two cards into an already printed faction set. So of course it doesn't really make sense like if we wanted to like totally like redo or not redo, but like not redo, but just even changing one number on a champion's health means we would have to reprint the card, and you can't really slide 8 champions into the back of a pre-existing deck. So a thought that I had is like the only way this I feel like errata could be feasible for Plaid Hat sometime down the line would be like maybe there's a pack of just like another like 33 cards or 34 cards, I think is 34 cards that are just like updates to various cards in the master set. I don't think it's a priority. It's definitely a pipe dream, but you know maybe it could happen, and some changes here and there could go a long way and breathe some new life into some of the summoners in the master, to some of the weaknesses in the design in the master set, which, as you said, there was less rigorous playtesting back then. So most of like the biggest cases of, oh, this card is overpowered or underpowered comes from the master set.
I couldn't agree more. I think that would be a great idea. And again, since right now this entire dialogue exists just in fantasy, this is like you said,
Yeah.
this is just us imagining a perfect world. To carry that forward, I would say I think when the game is roughly at the halfway point of its life cycle, which would be 33 factions,
Hmm.
and we're closing in on that number. We
That's
will be
true.
there
In like a
pretty
year.
soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's terrifying.
I think that would be a great time to do an errata pack. Exactly the way you described it. Wouldn't even necessarily have to be a full pack of 30, 34 cards or whatever it is, but I think that would be a great point to do a pack that is onto itself, just updates 2 cards. And
Hmm.
then right when the game finishes and we've done the 66 factions, that would then be the opportunity, after some time has gone by, let those last couple of factions, be out among the public and be played. That would then be the second errata pack that gets released.
That's that's an interesting thought. I like it a lot. I mean, and that's crazy to think about a world where all 66 summoners exist. It honestly, I'm so bad at tangents, but like the fact that we're like halfway through, like kind of scares me. It's like I want new summoner wars. I want new summoners forever. And the fact that we do already have so many, we're almost halfway to 66. That's just crazy.
Yeah, yeah. I'm hopeful though. I'm hopeful for more errata. I really think that the game, I think it'll thrive all the more. And I will give this plug that, that's up to us largely as the fans to just show our love and show our support for what is really a great game. And above and beyond anything that's discussed today, what's really a great game just in terms of balance. The game is very well balanced. I mean, yes, a lot of what you'll hear from me on this stream is going to be hyper focused on areas that I think are not balanced. But I do want to preface that by saying overall, I think there's great balance to this game. Really, kudos um, to Plaid Hat for releasing such a balanced product.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like nothing else on the market for card games. And maybe even after this discussion, we could like briefly mention like changes to like non-master set factions that we could make, and like the immediate note would be like there's very few. Like there's very few changes that come to mind to anything past the master set that I would push for. Like just everything is very tightly balanced these days.
Yeah, we all can agree, I'm sure, that Titus in the High Elves just needs to go to 10 life. You know, there's a small change. How about we just take Vlox, the summoner, and we just knock him down to 12 life? There's another change outside of the master set that I would be in favor of.
Interesting. Yeah, and I maybe have a couple more, but we should get started with the master set and get
Let's do
talking.
it.
Oh, and one more disclaimer I'd want to give is that like, and this is actually to you, so I don't offend you. Is I am a crazy skeptic of all ideas. I love hearing ideas. I'm not great at coming up with ideas of my own, but like I'm super excited to hear what you've come up with, but like I'm gonna be skeptical of them because I'm skeptical of everything. And it's like, could that work? Is that gonna be overpowered? So that's just who I am. Expect questions every which way.
I love it. I can totally do this. It forces the other party to make their case, to make their sales pitch. So I'll do my best to be prepared for that.
All right, and then you'll hear all the trash ideas that I've like barely put any thought into. No, I've tried. I've tried. All right, you want to start with Takulu?
Yeah, my all-time favorite summoner, all-time favorite
She's
faction.
so
Great place to start.
I love Takulu. I love her so much. So I'll okay, maybe I'll like do a tease. There's really only two, maybe three cards in this deck that I would consider changing. But before saying any of that, I wanna hear your takes. What you would change?
Looks like, so I'm doing a quick count right now. I
Yeah.
would change, looks like I would change four cards.
Okay. A lot.
Yeah, if could you just scroll down a little bit there? I'm looking at your screen. I just want
Oh,
to make sure I'm
I
okay.
think these are
So
just
I
more
wasn't
common, so it should all be on
got
the
it.
screen. Yeah.
Got it. So one, two, three, four. Yep, I would change four cards.
All right. Interesting. Well, maybe. Yeah. Do you want to? Would you change any commons? This is like a guessing game. Are there any commons that
I
you would
sure
change?
would. Yes, yes,
You
I would.
would. Interesting. I'll spoil it right now. My answer is I would not. So let's hear it.
All right. I would change what I believe is the number one most powerful common in the game. Um, and you know, part of it killed me on one hand because this is my favorite faction. So it's, you know, it's like a movie director, you know, cutting out and leaving things on the cutting room floor that he thinks are great scenes. So this is a nerf. This is a nerf that I would absolutely bring. Um, I said this on our last stream. I used these exact words. I will say it again. What a bold move to release the Mind Witch in wave one. What a bold move, because now you have a card whose ability, it in a way, it is going to it's going to demand caution about all other commons that you ever develop. You know, if this card was released later in the life of the game, you could at least then look at all of the commons that had been developed and be able to do a double check and a triple check before it gets released to the public and say, okay, let's just make sure this isn't going to break anything. But by releasing it early, now every single faction that you released, you always have to keep in mind, okay, well, we've got one faction that can actually steal any common ability from this faction. Let's just make sure that's not going to break anything. So this would be my change. Mind Witch, -1 life. Mind Witch would be 3 attack, 1 life. Everything else stays the same. It is the most powerful common unit in the game. It has the highest ceiling. The potential of this card is off the charts. Limited only by, I haven't done the math. However, more commons are yet to be released. That's 4 times all the factions yet to come. That's the only limit on this card. So I would give it 1 less life. Not a major nerf, but a marked one.
Interesting. And when you're thinking this, is how much of that is influenced by like the deck building potential versus the base deck potential? Like which are you more concerned with for this
That's a
nerf?
great question. I
'Cause
always look, yeah, that's a really good question. I always look at deck building. Always, always. That is a major pillar of balance, in my opinion. Yes, there needs to be the internal balance to the faction. I, I demand that there has to be some balance in the deck building environment as well. I know that the deck building environment does eventually become, the Wild West, as some people call it. Hearthstone, calls it wild mode because, frankly, it starts to get a bit out of bounds and out of control. I still like to really keep it in mind. So to answer your question, both. I'm really trying to keep deck building in mind as much as possible. Two life is fairly easy to take out. I think what my nerf would do is my nerf would now make your expense of 1 magic. You've spent 1 magic, and every time I talk about that expense, I'm already factoring the value of the card. So understood, 1 magic plus the card itself. Some people would call that 2. Um,
Mm-hmm.
what I'm trying to do is I'm taking the expense of the 1 magic for the Mind Witch, and I'm trying to make it more vulnerable to most 0 cost cards. So, we have a Devout Cultist, just for one example. That's a 2 melee, or excuse me, 2 ranged strength in the Crimson Order. By making this 1 life becomes significantly more vulnerable to a 2 ranged strength
Yeah,
than it
absolutely.
currently is at 2 life. So that's where this nerf would kick in, is you're getting such an amazing card, S tier, for the cost of 1 magic, that we're going to actually make it vulnerable now to some opponent 0 costs to help balance it. That's my thought.
Interesting. Yeah, I'd say that this Mind Witch is, from what I could see, seem a lot stronger in deck building than in base, just because being able to put more cards in your own deck, like I can just already see like copying Arbiters of War and whatnot um, is quite insane. I would agree with you if like I would agree with you with it, keeping both base and deck building in mind. Though I think my breaking points are more lenient for deck building, or I'm like I don't want anything that's gonna like just utterly destroy the game in deck building, but I'm not too worried about keeping everything um, tight for balance. But yeah, so that's the deck building discussion. With Mind Witch, I think right now I would agree with something Waterdy said a whole long time ago. That is like at breakers as they stand, the commons are like he didn't actually give tiers, but the commons are like S tier, and like everything else in the deck is like B tier of events and champions. And I think that's and so like right now as the deck stands, what makes the Kulu a viable summoner is that the commons are just so good, even though the rest of the
Yeah.
deck is underperforming. So if you are to like raise the events up or nerf the commons, like or you would have to do both. Like if we just buff the events, it's like, well, that might make her a lot stronger than she should be. And just nerfing the Covens would make her less strong. So like I hadn't considered Mind Witch nerf before. Like if the whole deck was redone and the events were made more powerful, I could see it. And I'm very I am very skeptical of it because I feel like it yeah, the Kulu works well now, and especially with the power level of decks these days, it's not something that I'm too concerned about nerfing. So I would not sign off it, but I think it's an interesting idea.
I expect you to probably sign off on very little of what I will say.
Sounds good. Do you want to move on to the events, or more to say about that?
No, let's move on to the events. So, question to you now: would you change any of the events?
I think the only change I would make would be Blast zero cost.
Completely agreed. Yep.
And I think, and this is, I guess, I'm also just like parroting Water D. Colby has even thrown Water D under the bus in a Plaid Hat podcast and said that he was the person that said it should go to one cost, and now he's advocating for it to be zero cost or blah blah blah. Whatever Colby says. What Water D has said in the Discord is that he thinks zero cost is too powerful, but it's a lot more fun because this card suddenly becomes playable. And so you balance like fun and balance. And I think what I would go is one cost is clearly too high for this card because you never play it. Like it's situational. Like in certain situations it'll win you the game, but value wise, it's just not there. I think zero cost is too good, and probably the true cost is like 0.5 or something. I can't actually do that math, but of course we're limited with events. It's hard to balance events in Summoner Wars, and especially a lot of the new summoners. You notice it's just like it's a lot of zero cost events. One cost seems to only be what happens like if you really need it, because when you add one cost, you're effectively doubling the cost of the event. If you play an event, you're losing a card, so that's one magic. If you add a cost to that, you've doubled the cost. So like it's not easy to just say, oh, nerf the event, add one cost. Well, you just double the cost. Like nerf Parapet, add one cost. You just doubled the cost. Like it's now going to be like unplayably bad, in my opinion. But so yeah, but I think
just wait till we get the polar dwarves then.
All right, let's get there. But yeah, but I think I don't know. I think zero cost blast is fine. A little bit too strong, but that's fine. I think it'd be fun. What about you?
Totally agreed. Agreed 100%. In fact, I don't necessarily even think that it would be too strong. If I'm not mistaken, we've had several tournaments now, where it has been zero cost. Nothing else was, I don't think that anything else was changed about breakers. Just blast going to zero, and it definitely did not make the breakers dominant in any market capacity. I don't think it broke the game at all, and I think breakers handled zero cost blast as a buff very, very well. Keep in mind, holistically speaking, I'm moving blast to zero, so there's a buff. I have two other changes, both of which are going to be buffs, but I am knocking one of their commons. So what is that? That's how many copies are in the deck? Is that 5? Do they start with a Mind Witch in their starting setup?
They sure do. So that's 5.
That's 5. So I am nerfing 5 of their cards and buffing, a couple of the others.
Yep. So interesting. So we agree on that. Are there any other events you'd change?
There are not. Tempest is a great event. I really think Tempest is incredibly powerful, but
I agree.
but balanced. Hypnotic Call is a good event too.
I agree.
It's quite good. It's not spoken of all that often, but it is quite good and balanced.
It wins you games, and it's also usually good value. Like, yeah.
Yes.
Good. I like. Do you wanna keep alternating? Like one of us has to speak first for every class of card.
Sure. There we go.
To talk about champions.
I can do this. Yes.
All right.
So um, I'll start with Gul'Dun because no change. I will not make a change there, and I will say for a 6 cost, I think he is wonderfully balanced. You have low life. He is squishy. He's vulnerable. You have a premium strength with 4 melee, but I love the fact that it's held in check by his squishiness. To me, that's
Yeah,
fun. You've got this
absolutely.
premium strength, but you've got to be very careful with him. Not to mention, you put a bit of an investment into him. He's not that more average 5 cost. He's a step up at 6 cost, and then you have an S tier ability. So S tier ability, you could say S tier strength, but C tier life to cost ratio, D tier life to cost ratio. And I
Yeah.
love that. I love how you've got two excellent things and then one distinct weakness holding him in check, keeping him in check. So very well balanced. One of my favorite champions in the entire game.
Yeah, yeah, and I would agree exactly, especially since that weakness is something that the breakers can naturally deal with. It leads to interesting gameplay. Like you can like the breakers have ways of pushing around units in the attack phase. So you attack with Gildoon and then push him back so he can like he's safe and can only be attacked by one side. Leads to great gameplay, and I'm just gonna be parroting this, parroting everything Waterdy says. I'm thinking about it particularly because Waterdy was on the Discard for Magic podcast um about breakers, and so like I have all of his thoughts glued into my head. But something he said about Gildoon was like Gildoon causes so many breakers players to lose their game because you summon Gildoon, he dies in a turn, you just lost so much value, you're gonna lose that game. And I
Interesting.
love that. I
Well
love that
said.
risk reward.
Yeah. Yeah. I did not listen to that podcast, but now you've got me interested in catching that one. I've actually caught
It's
most of those, so I'll have to get that one.
it's a good one. It's a good one.
So moving on, the other two champions I would make changes. So I had said to 4 cards. So the 4 cards for me, Mind Witch, Blast, and now both Kalal and Gwalark. Um, Kalal is out of all, right now to present, out of all of the 7 and 8 cost champions in the entire game, I believe Kalal is the best. And needs the smallest change. I would
Mm-hmm.
remove Steadfast
Ooh.
completely.
Mm-hmm.
Most people would say that that's a buff. Removing Steadfast, most people would say that's actually a buff.
I would agree.
And then I would be inclined to do +1 life. And I think we'll be set with Kalal. 7 cost is a lot. It is a lot. So at 7, everything needs to be premium. And Greater Push is quite premium. Anything that can manipulate board positioning is really good. So Greater Push is quite premium. 4 Rain, quite premium. 8 Life, not really premium. Um, and so I would go to 9 Life, and I would want to test that. And I'll be honest, I would not be taken off guard if Kalal could go to 10 life and still bear that 7 cost, but I would at least start with 9.
Interesting. And I think this is somewhere where I'd have sort of a hot take. I think Kalal is good as she is right now. I would consider buffing her, and she's a card that I like never played for so long. Like first years of Summoner Wars, like first year of second edition, like never played her. Seems unplayable at 7 cost. Her like 4 attack in Greater Push is really good. If you can get her out, she can sit in the back hitting for 4 every turn and never die in a game. So like I'm on the point of I would consider a tiny buff maybe, but I tend to think that she might just be fine. um so that's where I am. That's my hot take. I think Kalal is pretty good.
Yeah, yeah. And again, out of all of the 7 and 8 cost champions in the entire game, uh, anybody who would discuss that group of champions with me, 7 and 8 clusters, you will
Yeah.
find I am not a fan of one single one of them. Not one. Take your pick. The only one is Kalal. And I would say she's definitely the best of the 7 and 8 cost group, and she is she is average. She is definitely playable, and she's average. Maybe a small
Yeah.
buff, like you said. It wouldn't be super high on my priority list.
Yeah. Though I agree. I agree. Like balancing 7 and 8 cost champs is so freaking hard because like it is just really hard to have that magic and play it. Like even if they like even if the champ is like balanced stat wise, like it's still gonna be very hard to see play just to like get to that magic. And if there's any
Exactly right.
class to, and I mean this is getting aside, but like a champ like Torridon, I think is balanced for the magic, but it has another problem of there's just another really good champ in that deck, Varn, and it's just like, well, you're just gonna play Varn, and you're not gonna play it, and so it's sad. So even it's not even like Midi Mumway. I'm just, again getting ahead of myself, but Midi Mumway is like sort of known as like one of the weakest cards in the game. Is an 8 cost champ? It's like why would you ever go to that level? But even if it is a good like 7 or 8 cost champ, it's still very hard to get out for most decks. So yeah, it definitely you definitely need to keep that in mind when building this deck. But I don't think that that means they should go away. I know newer decks have tended towards bringing out more low cost summoners, and I think that's cool. But I think that low cost champions. But I think high cost champions should always have a place. I think they're fun too.
Agreed. Agreed. Yep. Moving on to Guilark, very similar for me. Um, I I think I may actually value Gualark a little bit higher than what I tend to hear. I don't think Gualark is bad. I think Gualark is solid, and I think Light and Levitate together are quite good, quite good abilities. I feel like Gualark is very slightly under the curve. Again, playable and slightly under the curve. I would do +1 life and want to test that and see how that goes.
Interesting. Yeah, I feel like we're swapped for these two. I think Wallark's kind of bad, and I
Hmm.
I know there are players that like will live and die by Growlark and do um aggro breakers, and I'm also sort of parroting Waterdeep here, so everyone go listen to that podcast. But like Growlark's like flight with breakers, like I don't feel like it quite fits. Like when I'm with Breaker, I'm sort of wanting to sit back and just be mean by pushing my own units around. Like flight, like it sounds like something you'd want to do to like rush down your opponent or something. Like I just struggle to like even if I could get Gualark out, like just to be like just to see the utility for flight, but maybe it's there. Um, I don't know. So I would raise questions as to like whether like there's different levels of like remastered because there's like there's certain things that like I might just say it's like okay, well if we're assuming like a perfect world where we can do whatever we want, like maybe we should just like consider scrapping this entirely and designing something else. And that's
Definitely.
and I don't know if that's something I would do for Growlithe, but there is like a world to say it's like Talia, like she's never played. Maybe we just want a different champ,
Absolutely. It's
or
something
something.
to
And
do, for example, for Talia. How about Talia in Shadow Elves? Let's just take the card in a completely different direction. That's where my mind goes for something like that.
yeah, but then you also need to like be careful because it's like, well, like, do we really want to change? I'm again like super ahead of myself, but some of the master set champs, I'll be like, so I want this card to be like totally different, but like I don't know if I actually would want to change the deck that much because the deck is cool as is, and maybe it doesn't need that tool. But anyway, so Gwarlark, I could even see like a bigger change. I would consider nerfing the cost or buffing the cost, like a 5 cost Growlark. Like if you can just get him out more, have more things flying around, I don't know, maybe you'll get a lot more utility out of that. It doesn't I think that would like massively increase the threat is if Growlark was a 5 cost. So that's something I would try.
Yep. And I'd be game to test that, definitely.
Yeah, might need a health nerf alongside. Might need like 7 health if it's gonna be 5 cost. I don't know. But yeah, you satisfied with breakers? Any closing thoughts?
We just perfected the breakers between the two of us.
We have done it. Plaid hat, where's our check? All right, moving on. Ready for sneaks?
I am ready for sneaks. So I think with the breakers, so I started with the breakers by saying how many cards I would change. So you start that. How many cards in Cave Goblins would you change?
I can say it pretty easily. I would change one. I'm pretty I'm pretty pure on these guys. How about you?
I would definitely change one. I would be open to changing two.
All right. Well, I made you start last time, so I can go ahead and put it on the board. The Eater. The Eater is the big outlier in this deck. Everything else, like your commons, work great. You play them all because they don't cost anything. Your events are like super, super powerful. Unrelenting is like just insane value. Other cards, 0 cost utility, they're great. You can get rid of them if you don't want to. Blarf and Smeg both good. I would, yeah, they're both good. They're fine. I wouldn't change them even if there's like a slight maybe Blarf slightly better. I don't know. But the Eater is just it just doesn't work. Like what the Cave Goblins need is a really high health unit that can come down to beat Fungal Dwarves. And like
Yeah.
it's literally or just infect decks in general or decks with just a bunch of units, but infect is like the biggest thing is like there are decks out there that if that like require the counter to be a big champion in the way that can't just get eaten up like against Fungal Dwarves what you want to do is put big high health units in their face or retreat and shoot them at a range because you need to stop your units from getting infected, which is they're destroyed and then replaced by a carrier. It's really bad. Sneaks has nothing, no tools to deal with that, except for the Eater is hypothetically a great tool to deal with infect decks, also Fallen Kingdom carriers, but it just does not have enough bang for its buck. At 6 cost, 5/9, and a downside is like it's just not quite the right stats, and I don't even think it would need to change. I would consider +3, maybe even +4 health to the Eater as like just a quick and dirty change. You could try to do something fancier as well, but yeah, that's the only change I would put on these guys.
Um, I definitely agree. The Eater is not a great card. I'm torn for myself as to whether it would be F tier or whether it would be D tier. You know, on a good
Yeah,
day, it might be D tier. And I say that largely because its strength is super premium. Now at 5 strength, that's really premium. But as you said, for what you're paying, um, and what you're getting, the downside is a pretty major downside. Yeah, it absolutely needs a buff. I think you said 3 or maybe 4 life. Is that right?
that's what I said.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I could see going for that. I could see maybe leaving it completely the way it is and knocking the cost down to 4. Um,
Ooh,
that's a
interesting.
possibility as well.
That's a hot take.
Make it 4 cost and leave everything else the way it is. I would be interested to test something like that.
That's interesting because that would probably be balanced, and at a lower cost, it would you would see it a heck of a lot more, and like perhaps even at the point of like you have to play this card, which is I'm definitely on the edge of champs. For some reason, I'm design wise, I kind of prefer higher cost champs. And this is just sort of a philosophy thing. And I'm like always going off on these tangents, but I kind of like champs to be like interesting niche tools for decks. I don't like champs that are always coming out in every game, no matter what. Um, and champs that cost 3 or 4 are much more likely to be in that category because they're just so easy to get out. So I don't know. I'm very cautious around designing designing those chaps. So like, from like a philosophical like taste perspective, I like the eater just like being this. You maybe have to like even build magic as cave goblins to get up to that six. I enjoy that, but I could totally see another change being interesting as well.
Yeah. So I'm very open to anybody's ideas for buffing the eater, but that would be my thought is I would say,
Yeah.
okay, if I had to pick one change, let's try testing it at 4 cost and see how that went.
Yeah, and I'd say one other thing that like if I could only change like two or three cards from the master set, I guess like slash starter set, the eater would be one of them. Or like actually, if I could only change one card from the master set, it would be the eater. Mainly
Oh
because it is
wow,
just like
okay.
it is just like it would have the biggest impact. Like the eater, like there's a lot of like champs where it's like, oh, it's kind of sad that that's not playable, but like it really doesn't matter in the deck. The deck has other champs. No, the cave goblins, they need the eater. The eater is like a precious tool that for certain matchups that would really help them, and they just do not have it. And so I think that would be like one just that would be the most impactful change you could make with one card of the master set, in my opinion, would be to buff the eater.
You make a really great case when you say how that faction needs that tool. This wants to be that tool, and it isn't. I guess I hadn't thought in those terms before. If somebody asked me, you can only change one or maybe one or two cards from the master set. Honestly, even if somebody expanded that and said pick three, your top three cards, the eater would not have fallen into those top slot. But now that you said it the way you just did, yes, you do have a point there. Normally I would have said Midi Mumway. I would have said Jacob Eldwin. But to your point, neither of those factions are demanding that that card be changed for the
Yeah,
sake of the
exactly.
faction. But you're right.
Yeah.
You're right that the cave goblins are the most demanding as a faction that this one card change. So that's a great point there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and if I said anything else, like I've also had like a funny thought of like maybe you could do something where when the eater attacks, it like the unit it kills gets placed underneath it, and then something happens. Or, like I don't know, like it could just be extra health, or I don't know, so
But it
something
just
funny.
heals. It just heals itself, maybe.
It just that's interesting. I don't know. So you could try something fun, but like it doesn't need that.
Yeah.
You could just throw some extra health. It'll be fine. But yeah, so that's my case for the eater. Save the eater. Hashtag save the eater.
I like it. I like it.
Uh,
I agree. The one other card that I would be open. So I said definitely one. That's the eater. I said maybe two. The other one that I would be open, and it would be a nerf, and it would be unrelenting. Um, so for me, unrelenting is easily in the top three strongest events in the game. I- I'm I'm frequently bouncing between first and second place for unrelenting. It's either unrelenting or chant of entangling, in my opinion, for strongest event in the game. The thing with unrelenting is unrelenting, it is a double blow to your opponent in a very unique way. You are saving yourself, but you're simultaneously annihilating your opponent's economy for one turn. Your opponent is getting no reward. This game is very much about gaining magic by killing your opponent's stuff. So when you have an event that prevents your stuff from being killed, it's a twofold impact. It's you're saving yourself, and that's awesome. That's really powerful. But simultaneously, you're screwing your opponent because they're not getting the magic now that they would have normally gotten. This event is insanely powerful, and it's also it leans into a negative play experience. Oh, it is just it can be so demoralizing to face this. I would be very open to testing a 2 cost to this event.
Interesting. And tournaments have even tried that before. I think, or I think there was at least one tournament where Joe tried that, and part of the justification being cave goblins have, according to the public data that he has, always performed very well. Um, m- uh, my take has been, and I think continues to be, that unrelenting shouldn't change. Though I agree, and how I get there is interesting because I 100% agree with you that this is one of the most powerful events in the game for both of those reasons. Like your opponent not being able to get magic for a turn, like it can just decimate them. Like there's nothing more swingy than two back-to-back unrelenting turns where your opponent has to be building magic. That's just the easiest way for the cave goblins to just overwhelm them when they can only get magic from
Yes.
discarding cards and all the cards back to your hand. I think in most decks, most base decks, if you just throw unrelenting in there, it would absolutely not be fair. I think part of the balance of the cave goblins as a whole is commons kind of bad. They die kind of easy, and then like very strong events that support those commons. So I think cave goblins as a whole, I think unrelenting is fair for, and I don't consider cave goblins to be one of the top dogs in base. I don't consider them to be S tier. So I think unrelenting is fine. It's the sort of thing like almost for deck building I would consider two cost, but as it happens, I think deck building has way more insane things than unrelenting. So I wouldn't do it. So I absolutely see your reasonings and agree with them, though I disagree with the change.
That's it. Cave goblins and breakers. So far, these have actually been two factions that I would make some of probably the least changes to. Wait till we get to Vanguard,
Yeah,
and we'll
and we've
spend just
we've already
hours
been
talking
alive
about
for
them alone.
yeah for 50 minutes for like the ones that we've been alive for 50 minutes for the factions that just need like one tiny tweak. Um, shall we move on? Oh, we have Fallen Kingdom next. You ready for it?
Mhm. I think so. This is a deal right here.
Okay, you want to do the same thing with how many cards we would change to get people
How
guessing?
many cards? Yeah, so let's see. For me, um, definitely four, and I would be open to five.
Okay, that's fascinating. I feel like you're going to be consistently at like one or two higher than me. I I'm at three and no more than three, though I'm also going to put an asterisk next to that, which I'll explain later. Um,
Ooh, hot take
uh,
asterisk.
you want to start with the commons? Anything you'd change?
Yes, I would change one comment. So I think if I'm remembering, it was either a stream or it was a text dialogue somewhere. I think I may be in disagreement with Water D here. And I think Water D has some of the best insights into card balance of anybody. Um, I, I'm going to have to ask Water D's forgiveness if I'm remembering this wrong, but I think Water D might have said thinking that the undead archer is like one of the strongest, if not the strongest common in the game. I feel like I remember hearing that
Undead.
or reading that.
Interesting.
I'm sorry.
I've definitely heard him say that about undead carriers. Or that he thinks
Okay.
carriers are very strong. He might have also said something about archers. Not sure.
For me, I think the two cost is way too much, and so I would buff the undead archer, and I would move them to a one cost. If that turned out to be like just a gross buff, and suddenly the fallen kingdom as an entire faction are being carried by undead archers, and it just causes the undead archer to burst on the scene in a way that I would not expect, then I would be open to now leaving them at one cost and doing what I said about the mind witch and moving them to one life. So my first change I would cut their cost in half, and I would make undead archers cost 1. If it caused them to explode in power, I would then be open to making them 1 life to trim them back a little bit.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, I think I would not change them. I think Rhett's power is very strange, and I kind of like the dynamic that the undead archers, you kind of discard them or blood summon them or raise the dead. You don't want to play. I think it's kind of cool that at 2 cost, you don't want to summon them very often. I think it's a very interesting weakness because clearly this unit is not statted for 2 cost. It's statted more for 1 cost. And maybe that ability, I mean, maybe that ability is strong enough to be like 1.5 cost or something, though I kind of doubt it. I think it's an interesting weakness, and I I do sort of want a buff to Fallen Kingdoms, but this isn't where I'd put it. So I would go with some other things.
Yep. And that would be it for the comments for me.
Yep, myself as well. I think the commons work very well, and yeah, I'd say carriers are really good, really good at just dealing with low health units. They're just really strong to be able to get those extra units. Warriors are like one of the best anti-champ units in the games. Like overall, good tools. It's yeah, good commons set.
So
And yeah,
the goodness stops there if we move on to the champions.
it sure does. You want to start, or shall I?
Go for it. I'll let you start with the champions.
Um, so they're just all bad. That's it. Anything else? No.
Dragos is marginally playable. Dragos is not F tier in my opinion. D tier, marginally playable, still needs help. The other two are bad. I
Yeah,
love actually Elut Ball. Elut Ball is a heck of a lot of fun. Love the card, love the design, the ability. I think it's really cool that wherever you have a unit on the board, you can suddenly have 6 strength uh, burst out, um, but still needs help. So if I could jump in on Elut Ball,
yeah.
I've had all different ideas, but then I can't take credit for this one. I heard this one shared. I honestly forget who shared this, but I would probably start with the cleanest, quickest change, and it would be adding another ability. This unit may be summoned from your discard pile, and I would like to see what that does for Elut Ball.
That's that's interesting. Yeah, yeah, and I think oh, so someone changing in chat. I think the intent with Alep Ball is 666.
It
And
was, yeah,
I
definitely.
think it certainly is. And what's also interesting is that all the other champs cost 6, so it's another 666. So you feel like
Correct.
you're
Yeah.
breaking something by like changing costs. So like these all of these champs really beg sort of creative fixes like that, like someone from discard pile. Um, and yeah, let ball is something. Yeah, I want to try something fun. So something like that. I think something that I heard recently. And Kowloon mentioned it. And I asked him, and he said it was okay to mention it on stream, but to have something like an extra ability on a let ball that was like, when you summon this, actually no, you just add this to Born by Fire. When you summon this unit, destroy any number of friendly units. Replace one of them with a let ball, but it's -1 cost per unit you destroyed. So
Pretty cool. That's pretty
that's
cool.
another interesting, like, because if you and as Rhett, you have all sorts of just trash units out there all the time. You could pretty easily get like a 2 cost to let ball in their face. That's horrifying. Like, and that could kind of happen at any time. That might even be too good. I don't know.
It might be
So like,
too good because you're simultaneously buffing all of your warriors, your undead warriors.
and your pyre. So that's so like this
Yeah.
change. It's a really interesting idea, and I like it, and I want to try it, but I could see it being too good. Um, and I'll note right now actually what was my asterisk is that Kowloon also proposed like that you could try an idea like this where instead of printing this on a Let Ball, you just print this on Ret Talus, this ability that all of your champions, when you summon them, you can destroy any number of friendly units and reduce their cost by one per each unit destroyed. And that buff has the benefit of like it's actually a plaid hat buff of it's just changing one card. And I
Mm.
like it a lot in theory of it's one card that massively buffs all of these champions. Like both Gul'das and Dragos at 5 cost, which they're pretty much always going to be because you're always going to have at least one card you can destroy. Definitely more. Like suddenly very playable. And kind of a kind of a menace. Like similar to how changing Queen Maldaria to be able to pull champions has like been a massive buff to Drake. This would just change Red Talus's ability to buff these guys. I honestly think that there's a pretty high likelihood that change would be too good because it would be too easy to get champs out. They would combo too well with pyres and warriors. So yeah, it's just an interesting idea. Wanted to throw out there from Kowloon. But I could see it being too good. I think it'd be fun to play with. I think it'd be fun to play with on a Let Ball. But I'm sure, and I've heard a lot, like other interesting ideas in the community as well. Like when he comes in, does damage and stuff like that. There's a lot of fun stuff you could try. Oh,
Yep.
and Alice
Agreed.
Alice makes a
Agreed.
good point in chat that text space is limited on cards. It's very Nick is always concerned with text space. That's very true. There's only so much space we can fit fit text, and the devs are very against doing like 5 point text to fit a bajillion things. Not very accessible.
So that brings us to Dragos, the best of their champions. I think needs the smallest buff. I would start with just one life for Dragos. Um, I'd love to even again text space. You've got that whole issue, but I would love to even fiddle with Dragos's ability and really make it like life drain. So how about adding to that ability that Dragos also heals himself when he uses his
Ooh,
ability for each special symbol rolled?
interesting. And,
Life
and
drain. Before this unit attacks, it may destroy a friendly unit within 2 spaces. If it does, during that attack, special symbols equal swords and remove 1 damage from this unit.
that's very interesting. And he is canonically a vampire. Colby has confirmed,
Mhm.
so like that totally tracks.
Yeah. So
Um,
I would
I
like to
like that.
see some buff like that.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. It's hard with Dragos because Dragos is like just sort of in like competitive play, blah blah blah. Like Dragos is the one like playable champ in Fallen Kingdom. So like I'm not even like I don't like how good is he really? Like I'm just used to being like, oh, he's good, I play him. But like yeah, like compared to like what something should actually be for 6, is it good enough? Yeah, maybe. I mean, for 6 cost, 8 health, 4 attack, that's probably more like 5 or 6. Probably not quite. Yeah, probably maybe 1 health, but I don't
Mhm.
know. He is playable as it is, so it would only be a small tweak if any. Not a high
And that
priority.
brings us to Dual DOS. Why
What
don't
have you whipped up for
you?
him? Yeah,
um, uh, respecting the little pun that's being done with all of the cost of the champions. So we're like, okay, we're not going to mess at all with
yeah,
um, +3 life. And let's start there and see where that leaves us.
yeah. I mean, Gul'das is it's pretty easy to tweak the numbers here because that extra health is terrifying on him because if you try to kill Gul'das and you fail to kill Gul'das, it's not a good time for you.
Yep. Yeah, +3 life. My proposition would always be to over buff and then trim back in testing. So I wouldn't
Yeah,
be surprised if +3 life became +2 life. I would be a bit more surprised if it became like +4 if it was found to still not be enough. My guess is Gul'Das will become playable and decent with 2 or 3 more life. So start with 3.
Yeah. I think that's probably a good place to start from a testing perspective. I wouldn't be surprised if landed on 2, honestly.
Mhm.
But yeah, could be scary. It could be a very scary champ.
I would love that. I think champions should be. Champions are unique. You only have 3 of them in your deck. I really want all of them to feel cool when you draw them and when they're in your hand. I want there to be a pause before you discard them for Magic. Um,
Mm.
Commons,
Hmm.
absolutely. When commons come into your hand, it could be the most amazing common. It could be a Mind Witch, and based on the circumstance, you still discard it very quickly. And a lot of that is you know that you've got 2 or 3 or 4 more still to come your way in the deck, or at least 2 or 3 still to come your way. But a champion, you don't have any more of that champion. So I think they should all really. I think a big part of champions should really be going for the wow factor, the cool factor that engages a player and makes them smile and makes them excited to play this card and hesitate to build it for Magic.
Yeah, and I like them being unique too, as it's sort of a trap of I want to play this, but like they're expensive, they're hard to get out. If you
Yep.
play them on an empty board, they die immediately, you lose. Like
Yep.
they're the cherry on top of every deck for sure.
Well, we just completely fixed the Fallen Kingdom.
We did. Did you say 5 cards originally?
So I said,
Or did
oh,
you?
yes, you're right. You're right. So I have been on the periphery of conversations about, I think it's Blood Summon that people are like, it's busted, it's OP. Um, Honestly, I haven't really dove into those conversations, but I I can kind of see it. I can kind of understand it. I would not have much meaningful to add to that dialogue, but I would be very open to some of those expert Fallen Kingdom players, people who've really experienced this card a lot. I'd be very open to whatever nerfs or whatever changes they would have in mind, particularly if we get the buff to the champion.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's interesting too, like to what, in what world we're talking, because like if it is like a perfect world where we're going for balance, a lot of things there's a give and take where when we if we buff some part of the deck, well maybe the deck was pretty fine already. It's like now it might be too strong, so we might need to bring down some other things. From what I've
Mhm.
seen of the Blood Summon discussion, is it's mostly deck building. I would even hesitate to say it's only deck building that people are concerned with. It seems like most people agree that Fallen Kingdom is on the lower ends of base decks, other than Donkey, who just like could beat anyone in his path always with Fallen Kingdom somehow with some blood magic. But yeah, Blood Summon has some crazy uses in deck building, and I could see some sort of change to limit it there. Allies in chat says limit it up to 4 times. I could see restructuring it so that you can't just destroy any number of friendly units that you want once you run out of cards in hand. Though my I was someone who had a deck. I still have this deck for first playing it, that a cool deck Blood Summon deck that very much used that. So I'd be very sad to see that go. I loved killing people by just destroying all of my units and then having 2 warriors in their face that I then demand. But yeah, I mean, I could see some sort of change. So I would really only see it for deck building if it really shaped like. And I was talking to Jexic the other day that like that he thinks Blood Summon is like just the biggest problem for deck building right now, and that it's not going away, which is interesting to me, because I'm not sure whether I agree. Maybe so. I don't know. Yeah, it's something I could see. It's something like what Allies proposes is an easy way to just cap it in deck building up to 4 times or something.
Mhm. And I'd be very open to such a change and testing and seeing its impact.
Her Grata's joking in chat saying you should be able to summon anything with no health limit. Haha. All right, next deck.
Next faction, yeah.
All right, well, for some reason, sort of out of orders here. All right, you said you had some hot takes for these guys. You said you had some
Oh,
hot
well,
takes for Polar Dwarves.
I don't know about hot takes,
All
but
right,
you
cold
you
takes.
just you made me you made me think about them when you started talking about Parapet, because Parapet, that card needs a nerf. That card needs to take it on the chin. Way too strong. So I'm just gonna lead with that. Um,
All right.
Looking at the deck, how many cards would I change? I would change two cards. Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna be real. After the Ice Ram nerf, I'm pretty happy with Svara. So I would honestly change like 0 to 1 cards at this point. I don't know if I'm in a great position to comment on our overall balance, but I might change nothing or maybe like one thing. We can talk about it. But I could. I
So
mean, yeah. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, for me, I think the changes that were made to Stavara with the Ice Ram nerf, outstanding. I really think that was a
Absolutely.
yeah, that was possibly that was in fact that was, in my opinion, the best piece of errata that has been released.
100%.
Uh,
1,000%.
so
2,000%.
it made the deck so much healthier. It made the deck so much better. It brought it in line from a real OP. I had on the Summoner Wars Zone, I had Polar Dwarves listed as S tier, and I believe that change alone brought them all the way down a tier to A plus tier. They're very strong, but they're no longer feeling quite so OP just because of that. So the most important change is the one that was made.
Yeah, and I 100% agree. And for anyone who was lucky enough to miss those days, Ice Ram used to just be able to affect summoners. So you used to be able to Ice Ram the enemy summoner, which makes Sfara not only this like crazy beefcake deck, but also Ice Ram plus Glacial Shift, or even like double Glacial Shift is just a game winning combo. If your summoner is ever exposed, and even a lot of the times when you don't think it's exposed and it's protected by units, you would ram forward, push those units out of the way, get the summoner, ram it towards you, and then it's just trapped or it's just dead immediately. So yeah, it was like the most broken thing in the master set. Thank goodness Plaid Hat fixed this. There's a great if you ever want a summary on that, there's like Donkey's YouTube channel. He has some game against Savannah Elves where he's just like just destroys them in a situation that seems totally unfair, and he's like, yep, they just play by totally different rules. But now I feel like honestly I need to play more Sfar to like understand exactly what she's about. But she's much more like a grindy deck where that makes a lot more sense. It's not a combo deck that's gonna one shot you. It's a deck that's has a lot of health and it's gonna try to like just win on that long game. And she actually has some weaknesses. Like she like not crazy at burst damage. Like she's probably not gonna assassinate you except for maybe with these Bear Ice Smiths. But anyway, like it's a much more cohesive deck in my mind. Tangent, tangent, tangent. Yes, also a very big fan of the Ice Ram change.
Um, so the changes I would make, I'll start with their events. Parapet. It is unnecessarily strong. Parapet is play this card and add 5 life to a friendly ranged unit. In a way, that's kind of how I look at it. I mean, yes, I realize it's not that literally, but I do look at it that way, and it sure feels that way so many times. Way too powerful. I heard what you said earlier, that if you make it cost 1, you've just doubled its cost. And I would say, yeah, you're right. You've just doubled its cost. I think this card could withstand that, or at bare minimum, -1 or 2 life.
Interesting. Yeah, so I think I would stand by that. I don't think it would withstand one cost. I think it could withstand -1 health. I don't think it could withstand -2 health. And I could be totally wrong about this. And I used to be more on the team of how the heck is Parapet even fair, but I don't know. I feel like the more I see, I mean, Ice Ram Glacial Shift, you can move them around easily, but otherwise, there can be counterplays to Parapets, and I know this mostly because I'll sometimes put a Parapet, and then my opponent will just like go to a different lane, and then I'm like, crap, how do I get this Parapet back in line? And then I just like can't get it to work, and it's just like totally stuck. And so I don't know. I find there's some skill in like how to position these things correctly. Five health has always struck me as just a lot. I
Yeah.
like if I was designing this card from scratch, I feel like might be more reasonable to arrive at 4. But I also want to keep in mind that some of without the combo, the ram shift kill summoner combos, like part of Svara's strength is like I don't know, just a high health fortress. So I wouldn't want to. I think 2 health would be too much to nerf on parapets. Though I would consider 1. That's my take.
Cool, cool. Yeah, and I would definitely want to see what one does, especially with my other change, because my other change would be another nerf. Um, Between Frost Mage and Ice Golem, you've got the second and third strongest commons in the game. I would rate Mind Witch as the strongest, and then Frost Mage and Ice Golem. Probably not in that order. I would probably say Ice Golem would be the second strongest. Frost Mage would be the third strongest common in the entire game right now. Um, I would not change both of them, but I would say pick one of them and give it -1 life, and that's where we need to be. Um, yeah,
Interesting. Yeah, I could see it. I'm again skeptical. I'm again sort of happy with Farah's strength being this high health fortress. But yeah, it again has always struck me like, oh my goodness, frost mages are insane. Ice golems are insane. Frost mages are just like so frequently like one magic 3/4s. How is that
yep.
real? So yeah, I could consider rebalancing the yeah, like as things stand for like quick changes, I don't think I would want to I don't think I would want to do any like any snap change to any of the commons really. I think because I think overall Sfar is in a good place right now, so I'm hesitant to make more changes. Though I absolutely see where you're coming from, and I can see it working with broader
Yeah.
restructuring and whatnot.
Yeah, my thinking there would be, I think Mind Knights in the Eternal Council are a great example of a properly statted 2 cost unit. We have an understated 2 cost in the Mind Knight. It's got 2 melee strength, but it only has 4 life. Normally,
Yeah.
when you're at 2 cost, you're at 5 life. Well, I think that's very appropriate because their ability is incredibly powerful. Um, what is it? Instill fear or inspire fear, something like that. The one that forces you to discard a card, that is so powerful that I think the unit is very properly statted. Then I look at the I guess it would be the machinist in cloaks, and I disagree. I think the machinist looks amazing on paper. I don't think it frequently delivers at that level, the level that it looks like on paper. And so I think it's a little understated at only 4 life. Then I switch over here to the Ice Golem. Oh my goodness. You've got a mobile gate, albeit with slow. I get it. I really think the Ice Golem could go down to 4 life, and I think it could be just fine. That's my guess.
That's interesting. And yeah, from like a statistics like math perspective, it makes sense to me. Though again, I have like concerns for deck balance because especially since like both of these two commons are so good and you want to play all of them. If we nerfed one of them, I worry that would just instantly mean well you have to play all 4 of the other. Like if Ice Golems became 4 health, I think there would be a lot more of a game of keeping your Ice Golem safe by protecting them with Frost Mages, which are now effectively your tank. I don't know. I would want to think about overall deck things like that. But I absolutely agree. Like balancing two cost units can be really tough, and I think Mind Knights are a great example of where it worked to have a two cost melee unit that wasn't 5 health. And there's maybe an example, Cough Royal Guard, where it just doesn't quite seem to work, but I also don't know how to fix that card. I just don't know how to fix it. So yeah. Though Machinist, I would not buff Machinist. I'll just throw that out there right now. But yeah. Any other comments that you would change?
No, those would be my only changes. Parapet is what I feel the most strongly about. Start with -1 life. That would be fine. See what that does. I would like to see Ice Golem take a bit of a nerf, but Parapet is what I feel the strongest about. I am just
Yeah,
very
that's fair.
happy with the change that was made to Ice Ram. That change to Ice Ram, it was exactly what was needed. So well done. Yeah, good
Absolutely.
faction in terms of balance, just overall.
Absolutely. Any comments on the champions?
Jarmund is, I think, one of the strongest champions in the game, one of the best in the game, although he's balanced. Having said that, I think Jarmund is a great example of a champion. He's a lot of fun. Players love to use him. He has broad impact. He's got a very cool and engaging ability. It's fun to use. And I think he's properly statted and properly costed. Nadiana, I think, typically gets a lot of hate. I think Nadiana is quite good. Um, I could see a world of maybe +1 life, but I think she's good. I really think she's fine. And Olag is a good example of a card that I think has gotten better
Mm.
with deck building. Um, Oleg is even better now in deck building. Oleg does really well for himself, I think, in Sand Goblins. Um, and I have yet to try Oleg in the Forged, but I bet you're gonna see great use there as well. Buffing every single one of your commons.
Yeah, yeah. And this is another great spot to plug the Discard for Magic podcast, because they had Orange Lazarus on for the Polar Dwarfs episode, and just very interesting discussion there. And they were the first. That was the first time I heard people say good things about Nadiana. That, and I think Aaron said in particular that he thinks Nadiana has gotten better as more decks have come out. That like just a big canon has become more useful and is better these days. I still have like barely ever played her, so I guess I'll abstain. If I hadn't heard anyone say that Nadiana was good, I would absolutely be like, yeah, this unit probably needs to be buffed because I've literally never played her. But apparently she's fine. I would consider -1 health on Jarmoond. Like, I love Jarmoond, and I don't like and again, like, yeah, this I said 0 to 1 cards I would change to Polar Dwarves. I honestly think they're fine. The one card that I was thinking of was like, I don't know, Jarmine, just he's just so good. But I mean, especially since like, and I see more use for Olag these days. Like, maybe it's really not worth the change, but you just get so much value out of Jarmine, so maybe -1 health. But yeah, champs in a decent spot.
Agreed.
Okay, moving on.
Moving on.
And I want to do a quick time check with you here. How are you doing?
I'm doing well on time. I came prepared with a nice glass of water here. I'm set.
All right, the glass of water to get us through the night. Good, good. All right, next up, I'm expecting, I'm expecting some blood to be shed, or this discussion. We have a Bua. This is always a hot topic for discussion. In
Uh,
how do you fix him?
all right. So let's see. Now, first, let's see the amount of cards that I would change. Oh boy. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to say Oh boy. Wow. Wow. I'm gonna say I'm looking at 5 cards to change, maybe 6 or 7.
Oh my
I
goodness. All
would
right,
see
this is
I
gonna
would
take half
see
an hour.
5. Yeah, I would see
Yeah.
5 and I'd be open to 6 or 7.
Yeah, so my answer is no. How many cards would you change? No. I have no, like, I agree. Abua is an S tier deck and has like always been the deck from the master set that has stayed in S tier, and I think is among there with only like 3 or 4 other decks, and it's always been there. Like, yeah, ideally something needs to be changed about him. Just make him a little bit less strong. Like, I scrap the deck, start over. I like Abua. I mean, I kind of don't, but like I think it's a good deck. And it's a particularly good deck to hand beginners. I don't know why I always need to give a rant and answer to a simple question, but so I really struggle because there's a lot of things I don't want to change, but needs it needs a nerf. I would suspect that similar to Polar Dwarves, like when there were discussions about Polar Dwarves nerfs, what do we need? How do we fix Polar Dwarves? Like, I feel like there were a lot of discussions on the Discord about like, we got to nerf like 4 cards, we got to nerf Ram, we got to nerf Shift, we got to nerf Parapet, we got to nerf the mages, and they nerfed 1 card, Ram, and it did really good. It dropped them from S tier, like too strong, to A tier balanced in my opinion. I feel like that change is there for a bit. Like I want that change of like just 1 card that or something that could really shift the balance. So I don't know. Okay, whatever. That's a whole rambly. I feel like I would want to try. I want to try to fix him with only like fix. Okay, just like pretending if minimum Mumway didn't exist, I'd want to try to do it with 1 or 2 cards, and then mini Mumways, of course, is a third. So my number after a minute of rambling is like 2 to 3.
Okay. So something you just said, pretending that MIDI Mumway does not exist, I would be open to just 2 changes. I would like more, but I would be open to 2
You'd be
changes if
open to
we
two.
pretend MIDI Mumway is not a thing.
All right, so we're seeing eye to eye there. Maybe we should. Maybe here I'll throw out one and see if you agree. And this is what Jaxic has said already in chat. Is Jaxic says, I really like Abua and would probably just change the starting setup. I agree. I think that's one of my changes. Is I would change the starting setup of Abua. I want more data. Like, I don't know if what the tournament has been doing is working, but like just making the starting setup less polarizing, where like the lioness just like if you go first, this I should like have this pulled up. Okay,
100% agreed.
I'll pull this
100%
up as
agreed
we
with
do
this.
it. But the lioness, if you go first, it's like you buff it a ton. It's really powerful. If you go second, it's just dead. It's just polarizing. Yeah, it's just not good. Here but yeah. So I would change the starting setup. I'm not sure exactly what to here. I'll pull up an image of it so we can look even though. But you say you agree.
I do. The starting setup, again, we're going to pretend the MIDI Mumway doesn't exist in the world.
Yes.
Then we're looking at 2 changes, starting setup being 1.
Yes. Oh my goodness. And what do you think? Are you happy with the tournament change? How would you change them? The starting setup.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't play in the tournament, so I can't say like I'm happy specifically with that change, but I would say exactly what you said. It's the lioness. It comes down to that lioness. Just as you said, you go first and it can be too powerful. You go second, you just lost a 2 cost, a 2 cost card there, and yeah, the
Yeah.
lioness needs to just not be a thing.
Yeah. With
Honestly,
five
I
boosts, they're a
even wonder.
champion. Yeah.
I,
Exactly.
al- I almost wonder if it could be swapped out for a spirit mage entirely. I don't know, and maybe just
I
not in that position.
Yeah, I that sounds like an easier change. I mean, it's interesting to play with things. Like if the if you could probably go back, like I mean, it's probably better a spirit mage than a lioness. I think I might be I don't remember exactly, but I think the most recent tournament had the lioness next to the gate and the archer in front of it. So like The idea being you can't kill the lioness turn one. If anything, this might be better for Abua, but the idea just being less polarized, and now it's like the lioness is safer, but it's more work to get it into the fray. So because it's a melee unit, so I like that. I know there was a previous tournament that had the lioness like way over here at like F2 or whatever. That was weird. Maybe that seems stupid, but maybe. But yeah, some sort of change to starting setup. And of course, it's harder to do the spirit mage change because then like you have to like give everyone an extra spirit mage. But in a perfect world,
Right,
maybe.
right.
All right, so that's thing number
So
one.
that's thing number one. Thing number two, I would say, would be Makayendaru. Unnecessarily powerful, just
That's oh,
unnecessary. That life needs to come down at least to 8, and I think she could probably withstand 7.
I hadn't actually thought about her. Yeah, you're totally right. No, she's busted. I'm kind of sad because I enjoy like there's a part of you that enjoys the slightly overpowered thing. Or Ted Vasine said in a Spirit Island like podcast that like what players tend to enjoy is the thing like what to players the spirits that people the spirits that players like most are the spirits that are slightly overpowered but not in a way that you're gonna easily notice. So like just slightly over the power. And Meki Enderu is like, I'm like, oh, it's so much fun when I play her because I always win. But it's like, yeah, it's probably because she's a little bit too good, Ben. Yeah, you're right. No, she needs a nerf. Just like stat wise, it's just too good. Given how easy it is to boost her in Abua's deck, she's just always a 4/9. Yeah, I
Yep.
mean, I think it could be fine at 8, maybe, but yeah, I don't know. Probably needs work.
Yep. So again, if we were to whittle it down, those would be my two. But if we don't whittle it down, I have to throw this in. Abuashi should go to 4th strength. It is criminal that Abuashi was printed at 5 and Maldaria was not. I'm personally not a fan of the errata that was done to Maldaria. I think that should have gone in a different direction, and I think part of that different direction should have been more strength to Maldaria, at least 5, maybe even 6th strength on Maldaria is what I would have liked to see. Abuashi has no business. Ibushi has so many other tools, so much else that's so great in his deck, even with the nerfs being discussed, still such great stuff. Um, Great comments, great events. Abuashi does not need his squishiness to be offset with this devastating ranged attack. Just -1, and he still has a great ranged attack at 4.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you, and I could we'll definitely have time to talk about the Moldaria change. I think it'll be another case of I'm gonna like agree with all of your points, but disagree overall. I'm a very big fan of the Moldaria errata, but we'll talk about that later. Yeah, Abuashi at 5 attack. I mean, and really what we like can almost structure this as like what is the big change that we need to make to Abua to bring him down to A tier? Like what simple thing could do it? And I really don't know. Like starting setup is good. I think he would still be S tier. The reason Abua had 5 attack was design wise. The Colby wanted to give him a reason to attack to expose like every summoner that you want there to be a reason for them to expose themselves and unfortunately, at 4 attack, it's like, well, he's just a border archer, so why ever bother expose it? Let's make it 5 and balance the deck around that. Balance the deck around the fact that we have this insane summoner, and that failed. And I think I saw what Waterdeep posting in the Discord that just like I don't know, just somehow fundamentally it failed because you still hang back with a like all it does is you still hang back with a Bua, and it just means that once you hit the end game, he one shots every single common before you can even get to the 10 health. So
Yep.
yeah, I could as like a big nerf to the deck. I could see I was a long time like a defender of 5 attack Abua from like a design perspective, but yeah, it just kind of doesn't work. I would say 4. I could even say 3. Like I don't know, screw him. Like just let him die or something. He's gonna sit in
Yeah.
the
Now
back
we're
and boost
talking.
and be rude. um,
Other changes. I love MIDI Kairu. Uh, too strong. Too strong.
Really
We've
interesting.
got I mean, look at the stats. So those stats tell me that we need a ability that is not flat out positive, because the only thing in the game that matches those stats and cost is Samara. And Samara's ability has the potential to blow up in your face. MIDI Kairu does not blow up in your face and has those stats. Inspire, great ability. Withdraw, not great. You have to pay for it, but the fact is, Inspire is a really good ability. So those stats are unnecessary. Some type of a nerf needs to come down on MIDI Kairu. I could see the strength going to 3, being 1.
Interesting. I see what you're saying. I'm not sure if I agree. I'd have to think about it more, because like my initial objection is I wouldn't know how to change him because it feels very delicate. I think 6 health would be too low. I think 3 attack would be too low, and changing the abilities, like, I don't know. I mean, maybe if withdraw like forced you to spend magic or something, that would be an interesting change. And I've never felt like he's too strong. Sort of as like, I never feel like a 7 health. So I need to look like, I almost need a list of like every other 7 health summoner in the game. You make a good case with Samara, though. I suppose a lot of the time when you play her, it's in a case where the ability is mostly positive. I don't know. 7 health champions kind of suffer in general. What other ones are her? I don't know. My instinct is that MIDI Kairu's fine. But I would definitely be open to chatting about it.
There's a ton of other 7 health champions, but what there isn't is other 7 health champions with the premium 4 strength. The only time that occurs is Samara, and so it set this benchmark that a 7 health for 5 cost. For 5 cost, if you've got 7 health, you get 3 strength and decent abilities. If you want to go up to 4 strength, now your abilities need to have an offset, and his do not. So I think he's way over the curve, and I would want to see him reined back in a bit.
Yeah, I think that 4 attack melee is a really good attack, and so in general you try to have pair that with a low with a low health, and 7 health is low for 5 in general, but you would say not enough. Yeah, I could see tweaking it, but again not sure, and it's felt fine to me, sort of.
Uh,
um
Obviously, Midi Mumway just needs some love. Midi Mumway is just bad. It's for me, it's between Midi Mumway and Jacob Eldwin for worst champion in the entire game.
yep.
Just bad. I have thought something cool to do with Midi Mumway. I'm not sure how this would be worked in, but something that I would like to see is it would be a nod to, there was a champion, I believe. Oh, now I need to look real quick. Which one? I always forget which faction. I think it might be the Obsidian Dwarves that have a champion that combines uh, 2 other imbued
Mm-hmm.
abilities.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's Volcor. I'll grab it.
Yep, Volcor has imbued spirit, which is taking 2 other abilities to adding it into 1 to get more strength and to get more life for boost. I would like to see Midi Mumway do that for strength and movement, strength and speed. And so have Midi Mumway bundle those 2, imbued speed and imbued strength, and maybe make it called something like imbued force, so that Midi Mumway gains more movement and more strength per boost.
Interesting. Yeah, Mini Mumway is the hardest. I've been thinking these last few weeks, like just trying to think if I could like just any like just 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 what I would be satisfied with, and I really struggle to change this champion.
I would say to start there, start with making instead of imbued strength, just make it call it imbued force, and make it +1 to strength and +1 to speed for every
Uh huh.
boost to a maximum of +5.
Interesting. Oh, Jexik mentions in chat that that means it would combo with Chant of Power because Chant of Power is imbued strength. So if you put Chant of Power on it and it had 5 boost, it would now have +10 strength.
Well, it combos currently, right? Because it's got imbued strength.
Oh well, it's but if you do Chant of Power, you can't have 2 copies of the same ability on a unit, so it doesn't work.
I see. I see exactly what you mean. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I could see something. Yeah. I could see that being interesting. I mean, it'd be horrifying. This massive tree running around with like 7 strength that you can't save yourself from. That sounds very funny. I'd like to see it. I'd of course be wary of that in general. It's just like goodness, like that could just like win a game for you outright. Just like an 11
That
health
is
unit, an 11/6 that moves 6 spaces, seven
that is
spaces.
what an 8 cost champion should do. An eight
It's
cost
fair.
champion, as far as I'm concerned, you've just devastated your own economy so badly that it now needs to bail you out of the hole that you just dug for yourself in order to play it.
Yeah, that's fair. Grata saying in chat, love the art. Yeah, I think like that's the biggest reason you want this card to do something is it's just beautiful. Um, I think Midi Mumway is a case where I say scrap it. Give me a different card. Like
Yeah.
what
Yep.
this does, but I struggle with that, and I'll get to that. But like what this card does, like I don't know, it's just a big unit. Like you already have like you have 3 sevens that cost 2 if you just boost these lionesses. Like where is like what place does this card have in the deck, even if it was like statted well? Like it's just this big beefer. I mean, it's cool, like a big tree. I don't know, I would say, I mean, I really like the idea of big tree. If you just scrap this ability and come up with something new, could you give me something? But I would stay with, I want something high cost. Like it's a big tree, and we have 2 good 5 cost champions. I don't really want to change the dynamic of the deck by like introducing another really good champion. And that's actually where I really struggle. Is like I want to say scrap this card, give me another one, give me something else interesting with like a totally different ability. But then like if
Hmm.
that was successful and like change the deck, like I don't actually know if I would like that. Like Abua's been Abua for 2 years now, and like the deck works together, and like I don't really know if I want like a totally new thing introduced there. But I would be open to all sorts of interesting things like I know Nick has teased on a podcast like a future summoner we might be getting of like a big tree that doesn't move as a summoner. I don't know, I always got like that vibes from Midi Mumway. Like I was thinking like of him as just like a vine gate, that like it's a structure, it doesn't move, units can be summoned adjacent to it that come into play with a boost. Like I don't know. But then it's like if you balance that and it was good, I don't actually know whether I would want Abua to now have this like super interesting like other playstyle of like a big tree that you're summoning off of. But that's the sort of thing, I don't know. So I'm really torn with like how to change Midi Mumway, because like I want to do a big change to like not make it redundant. I want to have a place in the deck, but then I don't. But then like I don't know if I want to do that. And but then like any change to just the stat line, it's just like what purpose could this possibly serve in the deck? As an 8 cost with like a bunch of stats, Abua just doesn't need that. Everything else in his deck is so good. So like I don't know. I'm I toss in the towel. I don't know how to fix it.
Yeah, help is needed. Agreed.
Yeah, beautiful art though.
Well, more could be said. I think the event suite is so good. Phantom Weaving never gets the attention that I think it deserves as an amazing event, one of the strongest events in the game. Suddenly, all of your units can possibly become a gate. I mean, it's like if somebody has Chant of Weaving in their deck,
Yeah, yeah,
every single one of their units can possibly be a summoning point. That is insane. That is so good. Um, so amazing event there, really powerful. A lot of fun in deck building because of the tremendous threat that it presents. Forget the boost generation. That's just icing on the cake. But the card is all about turning every single one of your units into a possible summoning point. That is so strong. Um, Chant of Entangling is my number one strongest event in the game. Um,
fair.
Here again, we have something kind of like Mind Witch. Now, going forward, anything that has the spirit symbol, oh my goodness, any summoner that has the spirit symbol and can use this card, we can now combine the abilities of commons and the power, the ceiling to that, the sky is the limit. Um, so we've got such a strong event suite. We've got two OP champions, in my opinion. I think Border Archers are another card that could be looked at to get a little bit of a nerf. Border Archers are insanely good. Um, I think they're a little bit above the curve, and I wonder that they could withstand maybe -1 life.
Yeah, yeah. Um, it's I feel like I'd want to talk about it overall. Are there any other commons that you would consider changing?
No, sometimes I would think about the lioness, but honestly, I think the real solution is just that starting setup lioness, and it'll make it feel so much better. So no, I would only look at the rhinoceros is tremendously strong, really strong common unit, but I think it's balanced. I don't think it's nerf worthy. The border archer is when I think we're starting to lean into maybe just a bit unnecessarily strong.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I really struggle with what to change about Abua. In terms of just like the fundamental, like where is the fundamental bridge to like how we get to A tier, just how we knock him down. Like what is the change? But yeah,
Yep.
but before that, like border archers, like best common in the game, maybe. Like they're just stat wise, they're just because it's so easy to get boosts, it's just always a 4/4 for 2 magic, and that's just insane. It's just insane. And
Agreed.
it 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 makes it like it's hard to describe like exactly what effect that has on the game, but it effectively makes Abua win every ranged fight. Like there
Yes.
is no
Yep.
ranged unit that can compete with Abua. So now every faction needs to come to Abua in order to compete. And so like a tiny change on an archer would massively like -1 health. Like I personally like I think that would be like too like I struggle because it feels like that's too much. It's like, well, now you're paying like you have to get a boost on it, and it's just a worse blight mage. Like a blight mage just being a 2 cost like 4/3, like that feels bad. But like
Hmm.
I mean like if you nerfed border archers, like like this deck still it still might be super good. But yeah, if you got -1 health on border archers, suddenly you can start trading with like 1 cost 3/2 ranged units that are like super common. And so yeah, it would just totally change the dynamic of how you approach every matchup against and with Savannah elves. So yeah, I don't know. I struggle with what it is to change because I like all of the pieces. I don't feel like there's anything that's like a huge like, oh, this card is clearly the problem. Just overall everything's very good. Something needs to take a hit if we wanted to make them just a little bit less powerful. So I think if I'm giving my overall take as like things we would consider, definitely the starting setup change. At this point, I've unfortunately been persuaded that 3 or 4 Takabua gonna do a big help. If no other changes, I could see 3. Um, if we're allowed other changes, I would do 4 and some other things. And
Agreed.
I don't think
Agreed.
3 attack Abua and starting setup change would bump him out of S tier. I think it would still be S, but I could be totally wrong about that. So the things, yeah, things I would consider nerfing, like, and it's shots in the dark because I don't really like changing these things and it feels awkward. I think I think Rhino's very good. I think Rhino is kind of insane. And and it's something I haven't understood for a while, and I still haven't quite gotten there. But a lot of players that are better than me at Savannah Elves say like when you first start playing Lionesses, they feel like the king, but then the more you play, eventually you're like Rhinos are truly like the best common in this deck.
Mm.
Just because of like I mean the threat of moving 7 with Chant of Power is obviously insane, but just the amount of damage you get with trample when you can move 7 spaces is just insane value. I think that's justification. I don't really get it. I'm still kind of bad at Savannah Elves. Um, I could see Rhinoceros withstanding a -1 health nerf. I don't feel like I could see Border Archers withstanding it. I could see Rhinos withstanding it. I think that'd be a pretty big change. So maybe. um, I could I could also see something like Chant of Power has to be within range 2. Um, be a massive nerf. It's now much harder to use Chant of Power because in the attack phase, Abua needs to be within range 3 of that unit. It's so much tighter if it's range 2. Like you need to be so much closer. You like because range 3 away, I don't know, you can be behind a gate, you can be protected. Range 2, you need to be close. So it's now a lot harder to assassinate enemy summoners. So I think that'd be a pretty big change. The change to Abua's strength starting setup and range 2 chant of power, maybe that would be enough. I don't know, but yeah, maybe a Rhino nerf. I don't really feel like any of the events can really be changed. I feel like they're standard, and other cards feel good. And champions, I think I'm more happy than you are. I feel like they're in a pretty good spot. If, and but maybe slight tweaks. So Grata says turn Chant of Power into a defensive event. Oh god. It gets extra. There's some meme tanks, some meme takes for errata. I have a funny one to share for Fuzzy from Fuzzy Marmot later. But so yeah, I don't know. Savannah Elves, did we hit the mark of like talking about them for 30 minutes? Yeah, I don't
Boy,
know. Sorry.
we still have vanguards left.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and I think, and I wouldn't mind talking about Grog and Maldari as well. But yeah, is that all of them? You done talking about Abua? Anything else?
I think that's it for Abua. And here's an idea. I'm just gonna throw this in real quick for the sake of maybe breaking up a couple of streams into somewhat more manageable sizes.
Yeah.
How about Maldaria and Grognak and Sarah in another? We can do that in another stream because there's there's a lot to talk about in those three. Maybe we could even throw in a couple other decks at that point. Throw in cloaks and possibly. Um, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy
Um,
for whatever. I'd have time to keep going if you'd want to, but but yeah, we could definitely talk about those and everything else. I could definitely see us going for another hour plus. Up to you really. Whether you prefer to
yeah, that
keep
was
going or
just
do
my
it
thought
later.
because we'll make it into a couple of somewhat more digestible chunks since we've been going here for just a little over 2 hours. Um,
Yep.
and and I think we've got some of the biggest amount of changes to be discussed between Vanguards and the Phoenix Elves. There's some changes in Tundra Orcs that I could definitely see. Some changes in cloaks. Maybe at that point we would focus on Vanguards, Phoenix Elves, Tundra Orcs, and then we would just throw in little one-offs here and there from the other factions. Like for me, a one-off would be moving Titus from High Elves +1 strength up, or +1 life up to 10 life. That would just be a one-off.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I suppose I won't I won't go into my takes then, not to spoil it. But yeah, Vanguards are another Savannah Elves, another thing you can talk about for 30 minutes plus. But I think after that I have much less to say.
Hmm.
Though I though I mean, in general I haven't had too much to I feel like Savannah Elves and Vanguards are like the two that I really do feel like there's something that needs to be changed, but everything else in the Master Starter set, I'm mostly like, yeah, tweak this, tweak that. Like I don't feel like there's anything major that would need to be changed. But yeah, we can save that for another day.
I think that'll be perfect, and we'll try and make it a day coming up soon, and
You heard it here first.
we'll
Three
have
months from
two
now.
2-hour streams.
Yes, yes. All right. Yeah. Well, there will be a part two to this coming soon.
Ben, it has been a pleasure. I've really appreciated you having me on. Hopefully the community enjoys this look at the remastered set, as I've been calling it. I know
Yes.
there's so many ideas out there for these factions, and to me, this is a great subject. I really feel like I can sink my teeth into the subject of faction and card balance.
Yeah, it's been super fun. Great, yeah, great to talk to you as always. There's so much to talk about. Like I feel like, and I'm always just like talking about both sides of like, oh, like I see it and I want to change it, but it's balancing is hard, and here are the drawbacks. And yeah, it's just a super interesting conversation to have, and people have been having all sorts of ideas in chat as well. It's always definitely it gets everyone interested, everyone talking about something.
It's great for me. It's great for me to discuss. So let's definitely set up to go on to part two. Vanguard, Phoenix Elves, Tundra Orc, and then miscellaneous.
And then the other 24 decks or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. Of which there'll only be just a couple cards.
Yeah, I agree, which says a lot. Well, thanks so much for coming on. It's really been a pleasure. Hopefully, hopefully it will not be as much of a gap in between our last our last two meetings. Hopefully we can get it done next week or week after or something.
Definitely. I say let's do it. I agree. Hopefully there won't be that kind of a gap. I'll keep in touch with you. We'll come up with a time and we'll do part two of this. And again, I hope the community enjoys this kind of thing. Thanks for having me on because it's very enjoyable for me.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise. You have yourself a good night and thanks everybody for listening.
All right, bye bye.